So in light of the Xbox 360 marketplace closing, I wanted to share this video with you guys that took place a little over 15 years ago. I had the chance to go to the Xbox 360 E3 conference back in 2009. And some of you guys have heard this story, but I kind of wanted to go in depth just because, the Xbox 360 itself launched almost 20 years ago. And yeah, it is unfortunate that the marketplace for the Xbox 360 is closing. At least I guess a lot of those games that are only on the Xbox 360, you won't be able to buy anymore, the digital version. So I wanted to share this video with you guys. And okay, so this all takes place back in June of 2009. Usually E3 was taking place around every June. And I was on Twitter, and one day I was just scrolling through Twitter and I saw that Xbox Live's Major Nelson was saying, hey, I've got some tickets for E3. If you're going to be in the LA area, reply to this, and if you're lucky, you will win a pair of tickets to the E3 conference. So I said, hey, I'll try my luck. I never win anything. I've never really won anything, so I thought I'd try my luck. Well, later that day, he responds to me with a message saying, congrats, you won. Just give me your information. And when you get here, when you arrive at the location that the conference is going to be at, just give them your name and they'll give you the tickets. And I thought, I can't believe this is happening. I'm actually going to E3. Now, here's the thing. I lived at the time in Northern California. It was about, I would say, about an 8, maybe 9-hour drive, depending on traffic. And you're like, well, that's not too bad, drive there, fly there. I ended up driving there. But the thing is this whole thing took place. I won these tickets the day before E3. I believe it was the day before E3. And so I'm like, shoot, my work does not know about this. So I go to my boss. I go, hey, I want to know, this is really short notice, but is there any way I can take tomorrow off? And I told him what was happening, and he was actually really cool about it, thankfully. So I'm getting my plans together. I'm like, I have to drive right after work to Southern California and get a hotel. And in the early morning, I need to make sure I'm there in, I believe it was Anaheim or LA, to go to this E3 conference for Xbox 360. And so I'm getting packed, getting ready to leave. And, earlier, I told my wife, I'm like, hey, I won these tickets. I'm really excited. I'm going to go. And my wife says, hey, I want to go to this too. You have 2 tickets. Why don't you take me? And I said to her, I'm like, yeah, you got it. But you're not really into games. But she said, I'd really love to go. And I'd really love to be part of this experience. And I'm super glad, super glad that I took her. And it'll kind of make sense as I continue on with the story. I was very grateful I took my wife to this conference. So anyway, we drive the 8 or 9 hours to, I think it was Anaheim, and we get to the hotel, and we get all situated. So in the early morning, we wake up, we arrive at the conference center, and I get the tickets I'm super excited. I can't believe that this is happening. This is all happening so fast. Again, 24 hours earlier, this conference, I had no idea that this was going to be happening. And so I get the tickets and I end up, sitting down. The show starts, okay? And early on, most, Xbox 360 gamers or most hardcore gamers aren't really into that much into music rhythm games. But at the time, music rhythm games were a really big deal, whether it was Guitar Hero or Rock Band. The 2009 Xbox 360 E3 show, they started off with Beatles Rock Band. And I was excited for my wife because her favorite band of all time are the Beatles. And so I'm like, oh, look, new rock band, it's the Beatles. Pretty cool, huh? And so they continue on, and then they bring out certain people that are connected with the Beatles. They bring out like Yoko Ono, and I believe they brought out George Harrison's son. And we're like, wow, people who are connected to the Beatles. And then all of a sudden, the announcer says, please welcome Paul McCartney and Ringo Starr. So Paul McCartney and Ringo Starr come out, and we are the whole like, now again, this place I was at, I don't know if there's 500 people in the audience or 1,000 people. It really wasn't that big of an audience, and I was very grateful to be there. But to be there, and not too far from where I was at, Paul McCartney and Ringo Starr right there talking about the game, I could not believe this. And I was so excited for my wife because, again, this was her favorite band of all time. Okay, so obviously Halo is a flagship, super important for Xbox and Xbox 360. And the cool thing about the show that I went to for E3 2009 is they showed the first ever gameplay for Halo 3 ODST. And it was cool to be in the room like, hey, this is the live premiere for the entire world. Because a lot of people, you know, the many millions of players who played Halo were looking forward to ODST. After they completed that, they're like, by the way, you know, of course, ODST is going to be coming later this year. In 2010, they made the announcement on how Halo Reach was going to be coming out in 2010. So just going to have that exclusive and to learn about that right then and there was pretty amazing. One of the announcements that happened at that show that I don't think anyone was expecting was they had the announcement trailer for Left 4 Dead 2. Now, keep in mind, the crazy thing for this, why no one was really expecting this, is because the first Left 4 Dead game came out at the end of 2008. So the first Left 4 Dead game was only like around 7 or maybe 8 months old, and they already were announcing the sequel. And of course, Left 4 Dead 2 was a console exclusive on the Xbox 360 at that time. It wasn't available on the PS3, so like, well, this is, you know, a heavy hitter for consoles for the Xbox 360. Of course, it came out for the PC, but Left 4 Dead 2 ended up going on to sell a whole lot, and it was super, super successful. Also during the show, they had a trailer. They didn't say what they were going to be talking about, but there was a sound which sounded very, very familiar, and it was the announcement for Crackdown 2, which I had no idea was going to be announced at that show, and I was super thrilled about, just because the first Crackdown game on the Xbox 360 is one of my favorite games on that console. Still to this day, I love the first Crackdown game. I spent dozens of hours with that one. Absolutely love it, and was thrilled to learn about, hey, I'm at the show, I'm learning about one of my favorite games on the 360 console is coming out and is currently in the works. For years and years and years, for consoles, you could only really play main Final Fantasy titles on the PlayStation, whether it was the PlayStation 1 or PlayStation 2. And so when they made the announcement, you know, prior to the show, that Final Fantasy XIII was coming to the 360, this was a really big deal. So at that show, they showed some exclusive gameplay that had not been showed before for the Xbox 360. I'm like, this is actually pretty cool, because not everyone has a PS3. Of course, Final Fantasy XIII did come out on the PS3, but to show that it was also coming out on the Xbox 360 was really cool, and it was great for all the fans that were JRPG fans and like, hey, I can play this on my Xbox 360. One of the, of course, of my favorites and also highly regarded indie games for the Xbox 360 is Shadow Complex. And they showed off some game. I love that game. I think it's fantastic. And they made the announcement and they showed that game there. That was the first time they really showed it, was at that show. And I was just super floored. Of course, Shadow Complex is a game now you can get for a lot of different platforms, but at the time you're like, hey, this is coming out for the Xbox 360. It's going to be a really big deal. You know, if you're a fan, it's got that Metroidvania, and at the time there wasn't really a lot of Metroidvania games, I believe, especially to that level of quality. Super quality for Shadow Complex. So another game they showed was brand new footage that had never been shown before by Ubisoft. Ubisoft was on stage and they showed Splinter Cell Conviction, and it was interesting because I think 1 or 2 years prior, at E3, Ubisoft showed Splinter Cell Conviction. It was a totally different looking game. So they went back to the drawing board, because like I think a lot of people were like, this is kind of the same Splinter Cell, and they wanted something different. So when they came with Splinter Cell Conviction in 2009, they showed off some really in-depth features of the game, and that's a game I played through from beginning to end. And of course, a lot of people didn't like that one as much as the older games, but I really liked Conviction. Thought it was a really thrilling ride from beginning to end. One of the things that I was so grateful to be a part of at being at the show was Remedy was on stage showing some in-depth, exclusive, never before seen footage of the first Alan Wake game. And of course, at the time, the only place you could play Alan Wake was going to be on the Xbox 360 at that time. And it looked fantastic. And they're like, hey, it's going to be coming out spring of 2010. And true to their promise, it did come out in spring of 2010. It came out around the day before Red Dead Redemption, I believe. That was really cool to say, because that's still this day one of my favorite Xbox 360 titles. In addition to Paul McCartney and Ringo Starr, there were a lot of other familiar faces there on stage as well. Kojima was there. He was on stage and he was talking about the new Metal Gear game. It wasn't a new Metal Gear Solid game, but it was Metal Gear Rising. And that's before he's like made the announcement that this game is coming to the Xbox 360. And it's not your standard Metal Gear Solid game. It's going to be Metal Gear Rising, and this was before it had that Revengeance extra added to the title. And I love Metal Gear Solid Rising Revengeance, and it was cool to be there when Kojima was also there. A couple other people that were on the stage notable: Steven Spielberg was on the stage briefly, Tony Hawk was on the stage briefly, and also on the stage that is where they made the world premiere announcement to show off Project Natal, which ended up eventually becoming the Xbox Kinect, of course, that ended up being in tens of millions of consoles for the 360. Tens of millions of Xbox 360s were sold with the Kinect, and of course, in the beginning of the Xbox One, you had the Kinect. But yeah, that's where the first place the Kinect technology was shown, was at that E3. And one of my favorite Xbox 360 games, one of my favorite racing games on the 360 was kind of announced there and shown off in a big way, and that was Forza 3. And when they hit the stage, it was cool, because it wasn't just like a guy walking out making the announcement. They came out on stage with a red Audi R8, which is still to this day, I think, is just a really beautiful car. And it was like, at the time when they showed off this game, man, I wish they would somehow update Forza 3. But at the time when they showed this, I thought it looked just like so amazing, so great. I ended up playing through that one so much and absolutely loved it. And to be there, to see their, on stage the announcement, and they had their real close to me, that R8, Audi R8, I thought it was really awesome. Of course, Call of Duty is a big deal on Xbox, and one of my favorite games early on with the Xbox 360 was Call of Duty 4, the original Modern Warfare, Call of Duty 4. And then, of course, 2 years later, Modern Warfare 2 gets released on the 360, and at that E3 show, as they showed off exclusive campaign footage for Modern Warfare 2, and that was really exciting for me to be there live, be there in person with that official exclusive gameplay footage was really amazing, really awesome. So to be there for that show was such a huge deal for me. Still this day, I think about it all the time, to be there in person, front seat. And that's something that happened to me at such a short notice. And I'm just so grateful. First of all, I want to thank Xbox Live's Major Nelson. He was on Twitter. He had a pair of tickets, gave them to me, and I made great use of them. And I absolutely love the Xbox 360, and I've definitely cherished so many memories I've had. I started off this channel talking about Xbox 360 games, and a lot of you guys who've subscribed to me know what that is all about through my collection videos or my top 10 videos, or just talking about new games coming out for the Xbox 360. That is, I think, definitely one of my favorite consoles. It's in my probably top 3 favorite consoles of all time. It did so many things that were right. It definitely started off rough with the Red Ring of Death. But man, they really did a lot of things right. And so there you go, guys. There's my story my Xbox 360 E3 story for 2009. I'll include a link in the video description below, where if you want to check out basically everything that I pretty much covered most things that happened in that show. But if you want to see it, it's actually in really good quality. Someone uploaded it about a year or so ago. I'll include it in the video description below. But if you guys like this video, hit that thumbs up button. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll talk to you later.